It's vital to everything that you do, whether it's to develop a six-figure mindset or to be successful at anything that you decide to do, that you learn how to change your focus. And that's because whether you realize it or not, you're always focused on something. The trick, if I can put it like that, is to make sure that you focus on the right things, on the things that you want to focus on. And so in the next few minutes, we're going to explore that in some depth. I hope that you'll pay close attention to this training. Focus is about your thoughts. It's about what you think and what you want to think about. And whatever you're thinking about right now is your focus. If you're focused on this training, then that's what you're thinking about. That's what you're anticipating. If you're not focused, then you might be looking at another screen or perusing your inbox or looking at social media. Focus can be best thought of in terms of an image. It doesn't take much for something to be out of focus, to be blurry. The cameras on our phones make it much less likely that you'll see images that are blurry. Sometimes an online video will be a little blurry if you have problems with bandwidth, but you don't experience that sort of thing much anymore. If you wear some type of corrective lenses, contacts or glasses, then you'll know something of what a blurry image is like. The same thing is true here. Whatever you're focused on has your complete attention. It's not blurred by other things. And I want you to be focused on this training, because if you are, then you'll get the most benefit from it. In order to focus on the right things, on the things that matter most to you, you have to think. To think is the verb form of the noun thought or thoughts. And thoughts are at the root of your mindset. Mindset is only a part of how you think. But in order to have the right mindset, you must also focus on just one thing. And so focus is a narrower form of thinking. It's so narrow, in fact, that if it was a picture, then everything else would be blurred. I want you to understand this because it's central to this training. You think a lot about different things simultaneously, but the one thing that has captured your attention more than anything else is the thing that you're focused on. This isn't something that you do once in a while, every now and then. Instead, it's something that occurs constantly. Even people who allegedly are trying to think of nothing are focused on that. If you're driving, for instance, and you're listening to a podcast, chances are that you're more focused on it than you are on the cars around you. You're probably on a kind of autopilot when you drive, and you only switch back to it if something gets your attention, such as sudden brake lights, or the sound of a horn, or when someone cuts in front of you. In fact, if these things take you by surprise, then that's proof that you weren't focused on your driving. It's also why texting when you drive is so dangerous. It's because the focus that's required to do it means that it's easy to lose a complete awareness of what's happening on the road. Parents will tell you that they can be in a room full of crying children, but that they can distinguish their own from everyone else's. That's because they're attuned, they're focused on the needs of their kids. Before we talk about how to change your focus in life and business, and how that's related to a six-figure mindset, you need to understand why there's a need to change in the first place. Maybe you don't think it's necessary. Maybe you think that from your perspective, everything is fine in that department. So the question is, what do we mean when we say that you should change your focus? We're really saying that you have to make a constant and deliberate effort to focus on what you want to focus on. You have to make a conscious effort to think about what you want to think about, because if you don't, then you'll invariably think about something else. Why will you think of other things? Part of the reason is that nature abhors a vacuum. That means that when you remove something, there's always something else waiting in the wings, so to speak, that will rush in to take its place. You can't think of nothing. Something will always intrude, whether you realize it or not. That's why it's dangerous to try to empty your mind. You simply don't know what will fill the empty space. A large part of the reason why you'll think of other things, however, is because there are so many outside sources that are clamoring for your attention. This fact lies at the heart of all marketing. Marketers do their utmost to make you aware of either a problem you didn't know you had, or to stir up the psychological pain that you feel in a problem that you are aware of. If marketers can get you to think about a problem that they can solve, then they're close to selling you their solution. And so you need to be on your guard at all times so that you can decide if and when you'll think about what you want to think about rather than what they want you to focus on. In other words, you'll always be focused on something. It could be for a short period of time or a long one, everything from a moment to minutes or even hours. Focus, however, is about deliberate thinking. Why do you need to change your focus? It's because if you don't do so deliberately, then it will happen automatically and accidentally. When your focus is accidental, then it will rarely be related to your goals, to the things that you're working towards. In the book of Proverbs, we read that idle hands are the devil's workshop. This holds true for an idle mind, too. That doesn't mean that you never relax. Of course you do. But it's deliberate, it's controlled, it's not accidental. For example, boredom can lead to an accidental change in focus. Usually it draws you into some meaningless activity. It's why you feel empty when you do it. It has no purpose. It promises a lot, but gives you nothing in return. It's easy to say that only boring people are boring, but that's a value judgment. What may bore you may stimulate me, and vice versa. But boredom comes from a lack of focus, from failing to decide what to do next or how to do it. And it's that aimlessness that can sometimes lead you into trouble. Drifting on the internet, especially late at night, is a good example of this. Boredom can also occur when you lose focus. Let's say that you've been concentrating really hard for a while, and then suddenly you find that you can't. That's not unusual. It simply means that you've temporarily lost your train of thought, that there's sufficient mental fatigue to prevent you from thinking the way that you could a few minutes beforehand. That's normal. Most people can't concentrate for hours at a time, and so you shouldn't beat yourself up because you can't. Even scholars have to take breaks. In his book, Daily Rituals, Mason Curry describes the routines of more than 100 creative people, writers, painters, sculptors, choreographers, and so on. A recurring theme is that many of them have a period of work each day or night, as well as a lot of relaxation, everything from regular parties to long, quiet walks. Some people party into the evening and then work all night into the following morning. Others work in the morning and then walk for hours at a time in the afternoon and the evening. That means that your ability to focus also depends on your ability to relax. But in order to relax, you have to have a plan. It's not something that will happen accidentally. Some of the most successful people in the world are like this. When they work, then that's their focus. When they go on vacation, then that's their focus. But you don't see them checking their work email or answering business calls while they're on vacation. There is a time for each, and they never mix the two. What are you thinking about? What are you focusing on? You may feel at times as though your mind is being pulled in 10,000 directions at once. That can happen for a lot of reasons. One reason is neglect. There are many things that you must do in your life and in your business that you'd probably rather not do. But if you put them off for long enough, then they can eventually gang up on your peace of mind. And that can make you feel overwhelmed, that somehow you've got to do them all at once. Sometimes when you feel yourself pulled in a lot of different directions, you'll procrastinate. You'll put off working on things that you plan to do. It'll be a spur-of-the-moment decision that's based on your feelings. Not only will it be something that you had planned to do, but it'll also be something that you know that you should do. Now that all by itself is a bit of a cleft stick. That is, it makes no distinction between what you think you should do and what actually needs to be done. The two may be the same, but often they're not. Nevertheless, you may feel guilty about procrastinating on those things, and that guilt often makes it harder rather than easier to do the task. Procrastination can be used positively if you know the secret, and you can watch my video about this when you've finished watching this one. I'll put a link to it at the end, but for now, you need to understand that procrastination can be an underlying cause for why you feel pulled in so many different directions. You can get the same feeling of overwhelm when you suddenly realize what is required to reach an important goal. That feeling of overwhelm, no matter what causes it, can paralyze your mental abilities. It can stop you in your tracks, and it can make you feel vulnerable and very afraid. In fact, it can make it feel as though there's a gaping hole in your chest. The feeling of overwhelm affects you physically, mentally, and emotionally. And this is another reason why deliberate focus is so important. Pilots, for example, use flight simulators to practice for those times when things go wrong. The flight sim operator can disable different aircraft capabilities, such as shutting down one or more engines, turning off various electrical systems and hydraulic systems. But because it is a simulator, no one is endangered. If you crash a flight simulator, no one gets hurt. If, on the other hand, you happen to be piloting a real airplane when something goes wrong, then the outcome can be far more serious. Practicing for emergencies in a flight simulator teaches pilots how to remain focused on what's most important and not to freeze up when it would be easy to feel overwhelmed by events. There's another reason why you struggle to focus on what you know you should be thinking about, and that falls under the broad category we call distractions. Distractions can be anything, good, bad, or neutral. A distraction is nothing more than an opportunity to do something else. For example, let's say there is something that you know you need to do, that you should do, or you should be focused on. But instead of doing it, or focusing on it, or thinking about it, you direct your attention elsewhere. When that happens, then we say you've been distracted. Why do you allow yourself to be distracted? It's because you don't have a compelling reason not to be. All the things that you could do at the moment feel as if they are of equal importance. In other words, the thing that you know you should be doing, that you should be focused on or thinking about, doesn't feel any more important than the things that are distracting you. Quite often, you can't trust your feelings, but neither can you ignore them. Usually, it's not easy to know whether you should or shouldn't, which is why you must consistently and continuously change your focus. It's so that you remain pointed in the direction that you need to go in. And so when what distracts you feels as important as anything else, then that's when you need to take notice of them and remind yourself that that's not the case, that there really are things that are more important than what you're feeling. The question then is, how do you do this? How do you change your focus in your life and in your business? The first thing is to deliberately think about what you can do. Stephen Covey talks about this in his best-selling book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He says that if you focus on what you can do, then you'll be able to do more. Your circle of influence will grow. He also says that if you allow yourself to think about what you can't do, if you focus on your limitations, in other words, then your circle of influence will shrink and your circle of concern will dominate everything. Most people let their circle of concern control their lives, and they do that by deliberately inviting negative thoughts into their minds through what they watch, read, and listen to. If you want to expand your circle of influence, if you want to change your focus for the better in your life and in your business, then you must immerse your mind in positive things. And that's because the world outside is geared for negative things. That means that you not only have to battle with your internal thoughts, but you also have to fight against all the negative influences that surround you. The second thing I've alluded to already, you have to decide what you'll allow yourself to be influenced by. Your thoughts don't exist or occur in a vacuum. They are the result of something. Psychologists refer to that something as input. Input is anything via any medium that influences what you tell yourself. For example, you hear something and that causes you to form an opinion. You either agree, disagree, or tell yourself that it doesn't matter. Whether it does or not is determined by what you do as a result. If you do nothing, that is, you forget about it, as opposed to choosing not to tell someone who needs that information, then it probably doesn't matter. But if you think about it, post it on social media, tell a friend, or use it in an argument you have with someone, then clearly it has influenced you in one way or another. And input that influences you will have either a positive or a negative effect on you. It will cause you to act in a particular way. You may read something, witness it personally, or see it on TV or maybe in a movie, and as a result, you start to think about it. You mull it over. Maybe you email someone because you think they'll be interested, or you write a blog post, or maybe you leave a comment somewhere. Maybe you just record it in your journal. But the fact that you do anything with it proves that you've been influenced by it in some way. And that's because the root of all action is found in your thoughts. Some sources of input carry more weight than others. For instance, you'll trust your friends more than your enemies. For example, it could be that you no longer trust health organizations or the government. That means that you place more trust in the source of the information than in the veracity of it. You'll believe that it's true or false based on where you get the information rather than on what that information contains. And because of what psychologists refer to as the law of consistency, it's unlikely that you'll change your mind regardless of whatever new evidence is presented to the contrary. This is true even when those you trust change their minds or recant their former convictions. And this is why what has become known as fake news proliferates. It's because enough people either believe that it's true or have convinced others that it is. Input also has a bearing on your values, your red lines, boundaries that you'll never cross. These come from conclusions that you've drawn about what's right and what is wrong. That's why something can be considered right for one person and simultaneously be considered wrong by someone else. But not only must you deliberately think about what you can do and what you'll allow yourself to be influenced by, you must, in the third place, also decide what you want your focus to be. And there's a difference between knowing what you can do and what you want your focus to be. That's because you can't focus on everything. Maybe you're one of those people that has a multitude of interests, and maybe you're also very capable. You're competent in many things. It's no different for you. You still have to decide what to focus on. You can't do everything, and trust me, if it was possible to do everything, I'd be doing it. To make real progress on anything, you must focus on just one thing. And research has shown that when you exercise the discipline to focus on one thing, then that has a tendency to spill over into other areas of your life. For example, if you adopt a regimen of regular exercise, then over time, and without really thinking about it, you'll start to watch what you eat, how much you sleep, and so on, because things like that will affect your ability to exercise and to get better at it. And this is not just true of exercise. Anytime you focus on just one thing, the other things that you do will conform to it. You'll start to organize everything else around that one thing that you're focused on. You'll rearrange your schedule and say no to more things so that you don't take away time from what really matters. And when you focus on one thing, then that thing will become important to you, so much so that it'll be easy to distinguish it from the other things that used to distract you. The way to change your focus in your life and your business is to direct your focus at just one thing. And when you do that, the other things will take care of themselves. If you try to focus on more than one thing, then you'll find that when you want to think about one thing, the thoughts about all the other things will interfere with your ability to concentrate. In other words, you'll be distracted by lesser things, by lesser goals. I'm Dr. Bruce Hoag. If you found this video to be helpful, then please like it and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to watch the video on how to use procrastination to get your work done.